Hi there everyone, Josiah here with Womprat Creations, and for this week's ScratchBuild video, I'm going to do some modeling. I've been mentioning SpeedBuilds a couple times lately, and that's essentially just where I'll start a project that doesn't really mean a lot to me. I'm not going for a high level of finesse or exactness. I'm just kind of building for the sake of building, and I'll often do that when I don't have something specific to work on at the moment, or I've done it on a sleepless night before, and excuse me, I've had some weird personal stuff going on, and I'm just not feeling great today. So I figured today was a great day to come into the shop and do a speed build. I'm gonna do some modeling, some ScratchBuild modeling, and hopefully that'll pick my mood up. So what I think I'm gonna do for this is just kind of focus on the work. I'll do some time lapse, and I'll do a voiceover after I'm done with all this to kind of walk you guys through what I'm doing. So I have a refreshing beverage here and a nice clean new cutting mat, and I'm going to put out a podcast and get to work. All right, you guys, I'm going to be your omniscient narrator for today's scratch build. It might be a beautiful day outside, and that's fine if you want to go enjoy it, but your eyes need to be on the screen. No, go enjoy your day. But you're going to listen to me ramble through this build. So right now I'm just kind of planning out a couple of my basic structure shapes on the styrene. And then I'm going to go through and start cutting them out. Now on this build, I'm not going off of any concept art, which is what I would normally do. I kind of already set out for this with a basic idea in my head. So yeah, this is going to be, I think it turned out really cool, but you guys are going to be able to see until the end. Right here I'm cutting out the window for the cockpit, and you'll see that I'm cutting a diagonal line from corner to corner of this rectangle. That way I can go through and bust out those triangles and leave me an empty pocket in the middle of that styrene. That is a technique that I'm really fond of, and you can get some pretty clean results with it as long as you take it slow. Now I'm going through with my panel scriber and scribing out all of the panel lines on all of my structure pieces. You can't see any of it with the terrible lighting that I have in the shop right now, but we're going to do some weathering later on to bring those panel lines out. You can see I'm starting to put together a part of the cockpit right now. I'm also, by the way, out of Instaset still. I still haven't restocked on that. So that little bowl that you're seeing is actually full of baking soda. And I'm using that to sprinkle onto my super glue to help set it more quickly, but you'll see that I'm often having to wait for super glue to set through this. So now you can see some cool shapes are starting to take place and come together. I'm going through with some weld-on here over all of my joints to give me a really solid bond on all of those, because the super glue I'll use to just kind of set it in place, and then I'll go through with the weld-on to really solidify all of my joints and make it really structurally sound. And this right here is where you can start to see some cool stuff starting to happen. This was the point for me where I knew that I was going to be able to take this all the way, because this right here is the most complex shape in this spaceship that I'm making. So I knew once I got this that I was going to be good to go for the rest of this build. Now I'm working on the back portion of the spaceship. This is much less complex than the cockpit was, but it's still a cool shape. Now that I have all of my structure put together, I'm getting out my filler putty to go through on the seams and make sure that any cracks that I have throughout are filled and that I have a nice surface over my whole model. Now I don't know if you knew this, guys, but I'm a real pro at this filming stuff. You can see right about here. I take it right out of the camera view, so you can't see anything that I'm doing. I try to bring it back. I realized halfway through that I wasn't paying attention to the framing. But yeah, I mean, you guys can see I'm a real professional at this. Going through sanding all of my filler putty here. This is, man, I wish I could sand this quickly in real life. The sanding, for the most part, is the bane of my existence, but if you take your time with it, it can give you some really, really great results. Now I'm going through with my panel scriber and just cleaning up all of my panel lines, because when you sand, a lot of that sanding dust can get stuck in your panel lines. So I'm just going through and checking all of them and making sure that all of them are clear of any debris. Now I'm laying down some tiny pieces of styrene. This just helps me kind of break up the surface of the model a little bit, add a little bit of interesting bits to it. Now I'm getting out the Greeblings. Now the first thing that I do when I go about Greeblifying anything is I'll start to go through and just pick out pieces that I think I might use for the specific model I'm working with and set them aside. That way I'm not having to sift through my massive collection of Greeblings to try to find cool pieces. I'll take care of that beforehand. I might not get them all on the first time. I might have to go back afterwards, but I found that it's a good way for me to work. Oh, this is kind of cool. I make little turrets for the front of the spaceship with some tube styrene. Now I'm going to put the two halves of the spaceship together. This was the second really cool part of this build for me, because it was the first time that I was able to see the whole structure put together, and I knew that I was at least relatively close to what I was thinking of. There, now you guys can see where I'm kind of going with this. Now I have to get some paint down. I'm just going with some flat white spray paint for the base, because I don't know, I think white spaceships are they're some of my favorite. You can do some really cool stuff with weathering on a nice white spaceship. Now the second bane of my existence, masking. But you really want to take your time with this masking stuff. One little thing off on your on your masking, and it's going to be a really rough day. So make sure you take your time with this, even though it can be kind of, it's not exactly the most exciting thing in the world. I'm going through with some masking fluid, adding some small chip effects to this before I start airbrushing. One thing to keep in mind when you're doing paint work like this is the scale of your model. If your chipping is super big, it throws off the scale of your model if it's if you're wanting the ship to appear big. So make sure that you're keeping in scale, you're keeping in mind the scale that you're working in. Now I'm going through with a paint pen, doing some small chipping effects all over the spaceship. It's easy to overdo this stuff, so don't stay in one spot for too long. Now I'm going through with some watered down paint to bring out all of those panel lines. You can start to see them come to life here. Man, weathering really is my favorite part of any build. I'm just bringing out some of the structure of it, and here we are, the finished piece. I'm actually really happy with how this came out. Alright you guys, this speed build is done, and to be fair, this kind of turned into a little bit more than a speed build. I actually ended up really liking this design, and at some point decided to go ahead and do a full paint and weathering job on it, which I typically don't do with a speed build. But I'm really happy with the way this came out. It looks really cool, and I wasn't working with a concept design or anything like that going into this. This just kind of happened, and I'm actually really happy with it. It's kind of reminiscent of a Y-wing in some aspects, which is kind of informed the paint job for me a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this is just an abomination of plastic and paint, but I really like it. Now I just have to find a spot for it to live. But thank you guys for tuning in for another Scratch build. I really do appreciate all of your guys' support. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Hey, thank you so much for watching that whole video. That really helps us out with continuing to bring you these cool videos. The other thing that really helps us out is our merch. You can head over to wompratcreations.com and pick yourself up some really cool stuff, just like this Visit Scenic Hoth travel t-shirt. Thanks guys.
517 to scanner control. 517 to scanner control. 316, report to control. 5-3 to upper bay door. 5-3 to upper bay door.